Without further ado, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you again to the 2018. We're all gathered here today for the keynote address that will be delivered by Dr. Abhijit Sen. We're extremely honored to have you here, sir. Ibteda for years has served as a platform to share ideas, both new and old. It's a place where students come and interact with great minds and hopefully take back one or two things that they can further implement in their life, whether it be values or whether it simply be the knowledge that they gain over here. Our keynote speaker for today is Dr. Abhijit Sen. Dr. Abhijit Sen is an alumni of St. Stephen's College, University of Delhi, where he pursued his bachelor's in physics, and then he earned his PhD in economics from University of Cambridge, where he wrote his thesis titled The Agrarian Constraint to Economic Development, the Case of India. Currently, he is on leave as a professor of economics at Jawaharlal Nehru University. He has been the chairman of numerous official commissions, including the Long-Term Grain Policy Commission, Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices, the 10th Plan Subgroup on Agricultural Economics and Rural Development. He has been the member of State Planning Boards of West Bengal and Tripura, Prime Minister's Task Force on Agricultural Economics and Rural Development, and the Expert Committee on Rural Credit. He has also served with various international organizations, including the United Nations Development Programme, the International Labour Organization, the OECD Development Center, Paris, the United Nations University World Institute of Development Research at Helsinki, and the International Fund for Agricultural Development, to name a few. Sir, we are extremely honored to have you here, and we would like our faculty coordinator, Dr. Vibhuti Patel, to felicitate our keynote speaker. Thank you, sir. The stage is now yours.
Okay, we are starting late, and I have half an hour. Is that roughly? Okay. Now, the talk is entitled India's Developmental Landscape. Now, that's a huge demand. And I don't know whether anyone, leave alone me, can actually do any justice to a title which is so broad. So let me do something slightly different. Let me begin with a word right at the top of that. And in fact, it's the word which signifies the event that you are now having, Ibteda. What does Ibteda mean? Have any of you thought about what Ibteda means? Well, Ibteda basically means the beginning. And that's a damn good title to have for something like a development school. For a very simple reason. Like any landscape, you can look ahead and you can look back. Guys at my age tend to look back. Okay? Guys at your age should actually be looking forward. Now the important thing here is, forward could be left, right, ahead, back. The direction doesn't matter, so long as you are looking ahead, and that is essentially where your nose is, where your eyes are, and you have set out to go a certain direction. And that's what a development landscape, in a sense, is. It's brought you somewhere, and you're trying to choose where to go. Some paths look more difficult than other paths. some things at a great distance look more attractive than other things at the same or similar distance. So it's part where you are, it's part where you want to be, and then, like anything else, when it is a beginning, you ask yourself the question, how do I get from where I am now, or where I am, to where I would like to be? And on that transition, you can come up with problems, some of them you know, and some of them you don't know, come up against those problems that you try to solve them. Okay, so that's the development landscape wherever it may be. Here, there, anywhere. What the title, which is not a title I chose by the way, it was given to me, makes me actually circumscribe this, is the word India in it. The development landscape could have been anywhere. But what is India's development landscape? And how do I see it? How do you guys see it? There might be great differences there. Now clearly, one thing on which I think nobody would disagree, and in fact, wouldn't have disagreed 50 years ago, will not disagree 50 years later, is that we want a world where certain things do not exist anymore. For example, poverty, illiteracy, lack of housing, all the things which go into human development indicators of one kind or the other, and things which are actually defined more by what we will not tolerate below, rather than by what a ceiling to it is. So I think on that, I think everybody would agree that there are things we would like development to encompass, which is nobody should be below certain minimum levels or various things. Now one of the things of course is that these minimum levels themselves will keep changing over time. That is, some people at some point would say this is an acceptable minimum level, and other people would say those acceptable minimum levels are too expensive or unaffordable for the country at this point in time. So there will be differences regarding the minimum level, and that is what, for example, your poverty debate or nutrition debates of all of those things are. But all of them are really saying that we all agree that there is a minimum, everybody should be above that minimum, and somehow that we also then say that the minimum itself must actually fit the pocket that we have. Now note, on this minimum definition, everybody is, in some sense, a socialist. In the sense we say everybody should have. We are not drawing distinctions in terms of who will have and who will not have. And that is another important point to note, that at least up to this point, the development landscape, wherever you might come from, is one which is really saying that for all. Okay? However, things of course start changing down the line, and much of the development debates, rather than the landscape itself, then becomes choice between sharing and incentives, or who finishes first. For example, in your Ibteda, that is your beginning, you can have lots of goals. You can go as a group marching together. Or you can say that the guy who finishes first gets this huge prize. And both of them are beginning at that point in the landscape and probably ending up in very similar places. Some end up quicker, some end up less quick, Some decide we'll go together, and those, just like which direction I want to go to, are choices. And societies make these choices at various times, and societies also turn around and often say that the choice we earlier made was the wrong choice. It has happened in, for example, the erstwhile Soviet Union, and it could happen. I mean, just before this, TIS's group on climate change gave you, had a whole panel session. Now, climate change is one of those things which were not known to this landscape till the early 90s. And as it started coming, and as the awareness of it grew, people also actually started thinking about the world 50 years later, especially if we've got to fit in a little bit of that socialist content, which is minimum for everyone, needs to be handled in a different way. There are certain things which actually, if resources are limited, then you must limit even at the top, not necessarily say that the resource limits are simply to define what a minimum is. Now, that's a sort of change which hasn't yet come along, but it's a sort of change which I'm sure Jayaraman and others have at least hinted at, if not actually talked about, and that is that there is, the same world that we live in. On the one hand, you have rethinking on the idea of socialism as expounded in the Soviet Union, and the notion that a good development scenario might require upper limits, and not just to say that everyone must have a minimum. And that upper limits business is essentially the difference between tackling inequality on the other one hand and tackling something like poverty or illiteracy. And in a world that all of you know, in a world in which on the most basic of things, on health, on education, what we get as minimum is getting so different from what exists at the top. That is, we want the best education or the best medical treatment, the difference that you have to pay out in prices and the people who can afford it are so large indeed. At the moment, it's around. Nobody's saying you don't if you've got the money. But if there are limits, like the climate change, or any other such limits, in a development horizon, these limits can come and go. And one of the things it can do is to bring back what, by simply talking about poverty or illiteracy, or you are actually trying to get away from the notion of inequality. But having said all of that, let's actually get down to the meat, and that's India. And as I said, I started my Ibteda roughly, 70 years, or no, 60 years, or maybe about 50 years before you guys did. And we've traveled a long way. Although starting here where you are, you would see that we haven't actually traveled at all. I mean, we're about as poor. The problems remain huge. And certainly, when I was born, the population of this country was roughly a little more than a fourth of what it is now. So, I mean, there is a huge number of more Indians today than there used to be. And yet, I think during all of that period, I have felt that we have been moving forward. I'm sure you guys will also feel that we have been moving forward. In terms of national income, in terms of our life expectancy at birth, I mean, we are, in terms of literacy rates, in terms of anything you name. We are hugely beyond where we were at independence, but we are hugely behind a huge part of the world. And there have been other parts of the world which, starting from roughly where we were, have done so much better. Now, when you look at the landscape in India then, and you start looking at it from that point of view, often what you try to do is, they did it better than us, so let's do what they did and not what we actually did. And one of the things about that, and for the last 10 years or so, or maybe slightly more, is we've been comparing ourselves to East Asia, and particularly China, and saying that, those guys have done so much better. That debate has sometimes gone into things like, we are a democracy, they are not. Unfortunately, if you take that line, then you sometimes actually devalue democracy. You end up almost saying that only we could have attained that only if we are not a democracy. Now that would be a terrible, terrible thing to come to in any debate. But nonetheless, there is this idea, and this idea actually permeates even today, which is that somehow we can do a China. Grow at near 10% rates of growth for almost 30 years. Now if we do that, we look at China. But is another China possible? China itself is of course working back. It's an economy which, having grown basically by exporting and exporting manufactured goods to the developed countries, it has now got into a situation where its future growth depends on its own demand, and it will not grow anything as fast on the basis of demand from elsewhere. But China is not leaving those markets. China will defend its presence in those markets as strongly as is possible. If we want to enter those markets, if we want to do a China, we have to compete and beat China in those markets. Okay, and the only thing we can sensibly look at now is Chinese labor will start costing more, we will get in at the lower end, we will actually capture those sorts of things. Fine, there is a view out there, and it's not a view I think we should dismiss, because it's something which, for a very large part of the world, certainly a population even larger than India, it did deliver. But I consider, from where we sit today, and I might be wrong, that it's unlikely that there can be two Chinas in this world. We've got to share, and that sharing will be competitive, and that sharing will be competitive in a way that will mean that for us to even keep running on this treadmill, we'll have to innovate, and innovate much more than the Chinese did. Now, in this landscape, there have been many things which we can call markers. It's important to mark them out. And among those markers, I think by far the most important marker was independence. By any measure of development, take something as basic as per capita income, or take literacy, or take life expectancy of birth, take anything. What you had for about 200 years before independence, and what you had in the 70 years after independence, the two are incomparable. It was a country in stagnation or decline, and it's a country which actually had 4 times as many people, and each of those people were about 4 times as rich as they were. So, the big breaking point was independence, And that independence came with our independence, and not necessarily the independence of elsewhere. This is where I think this generation should not be looking at models which necessarily try to question our independence struggle, our independence goal, and what came out of it, which is a democratic, a vision that here is a country even more complicated than China. A country where there are more languages than even in continents. A country which is divided not just by language but by religion and by what goes with divisions, is also jealousy and is also, in our context, inflamed by the fact that we have the caste system. So you have religions, languages, and you have divisions. Democracy was important, and the Indian democracy was particularly important, essentially because that democracy saw this as the melting pot of all of this. It was not a majoritarian democracy which said the majority will rule. In fact, if you look at the landscape and beyond, it's not very clear that if you have a majoritarian view of things, then you can actually continue. There is a tendency then for things to pick apart. So the second thing about the goalposts and the signposts that we have passed by is our commitment, the constitutional commitment to democracy, the constitutional commitment to a degree of federalism. And that federalism is, of course, mainly concentrated in terms of center-state relationships. But it's much more than that. It is in terms of recognizing that there are many national languages, recognizing the equality of religions, and these are things that this country of ours called India is defined by, and its development landscape cannot be separated from. The third big goal, signpost. And this is where the signposts start having differences coming up. Today it is fashionable, for example, to say that the period from, say, the mid-60s to about 1990 were wasted years. And that somehow we wasted our years by going in for a Nehruvian form of socialism, and that liberalization of the economy in 1991 was something which liberated the economy and added a huge rate of growth. And now on some indicators, that's probably true. On many indicators, however, that's not true. And again, it's important to remember certain things. One of those things to remember is, at least at the point that we are concentrated in, is when did we things start going wrong in India? If we look, for example, in comparison to China, or indeed in comparison to many other countries, it was about a period of 15 years, from about the mid-60s to the early 80s, where the gap became huge. Now what happened to this period? Many things happened. You can today go back and say that it was having, planning, not having free markets. Some of it is simply cracked. Because the Chinese only went into the free market thing in 79. By that time, the gap had already opened up. What really happened was that we as a country fought a war in 62. We fought another war in 71. And we got continuously into a situation where for 15 years, we were looking at enemies across our borders. Now, wars might enthuse. It might build nationalist feelings. But it costs in terms of resources, and it certainly in India costs in terms of growth. More than anything else, that is what pushed us back, just as it did the Middle East. These were two parts of the world which during that period had actually decided that their nationalism consisted in finding enemies across their borders. So the next milestone, I think, would be that yes, you can enthuse your nationalism by many types of signals. But please don't get confused. If you really want to ride on top of saying that I can put down my enemy more than anybody else, you're fighting a very different battle from the battle which says, I want to be as further along the lines of development as decided by economic indicators or social indicators. The two are hugely different goals. Therefore, let me come now. And this now is where your Ibteda begins. And this now, for me, is more or less the end, okay? But for me too, there was an Ibteda. And that Ibteda was, I've had 2 stints in government. And normally I've been teaching, I've had 2 stints in government. One of them was in the Commission of Agricultural Costs and Prices. It started with one government, it ended up in another government, but was basically the NDA, which was in power when I was in that. But that was a technocratic exercise. But the second, which is I was a member of the Planning Commission for 10 years, from 2004 to 2014. And that's where I could say Ibteda starts, because that is when we try to have a view. And when you get into government, you realize very quickly that the we doesn't mean everybody. We means a group of people within government who think in a particular manner. And there will be other people in government who think in a very different manner. But the bulk of government will not really think at all. It will say, this is how it works. पहले भी ये हुआ है, अभी भी ये होते रहेगा. So there are certain norms which define the functioning of government. Now that was an experience in which I think we thought, some of us, that we've had already more than 10 years, by that time 13 years, of the liberalized economy. Starting in 1991, by the time 2004 came, you had. And you had a liberalized economy at least under 2 administrations, if not more. So you had the Congress, you had the BJP. And some things have gone right. A lot of things, just as today you would say, have not gone right. Now I've got to do some things very quickly on the things which have not gone right. And that's where things came up. For example, on Narega, that's where things came up, say right to information, right to food, all of this. Now packaged in a notion of a rights approach which was new. of this was, of course, coming from Sonia Gandhi's National Advisory Council. And much of this was being opposed by, for example, I remember my second or third meeting in the planning committee was with the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister himself was opposed to the idea of a Narega at all. It is actually getting the system to move in a particular way, which was what government was about. Like, you may like the result, you may dislike the result. But at the end of the day, I think governments ended up owning up to what they did. And all governments will. I mean, governments, unless they collapse, are teams. So they gave in, for example, on the Narega or certain. They kept fighting, for example, on the food security bill. That didn't actually come into being till very, very late. But there were other places where I think guys like me gave in. And where did we give in? And I think where we did give in was in some sense a bit disastrous. We gave in essentially to the argument that I started with, which is that whatever course you take, you will be told that we don't have resources enough. That is, whatever you want to do and deliver, there will always be a choice between what you can do and what you want to do and what you can afford. And I think the choice that we made and we gave in was that yes, there will be shortage of resources for the government, but much of the infrastructure, especially on certain types of roads and ports and things, should go in the public-private mode. And in fact, we did get more public-private investment in what are public sector activities than most other countries did. Unfortunately, it is also a basic constituent of the bank's bad loan problem today. So it was something where we rushed. And later I think we realized that some of this had not been properly incorporated in terms of its revenue returns, in terms. So today the economy sits in a point that there is a different government. Its commitment to things like rights approach doesn't exist. It has a huge commitment to an infrastructure approach, the so-called Gujarat model. And it is a government which believes that something like a China is possible. In a sense, Make in India is really a call to the foreign companies, make it in India and export from India. And in some sense, that call is not entirely going unlistened to. Foreign investment at this point is higher than it has ever been. Last year, for example, it was about $60 billion. Now, $60 billion is a huge, huge amount. But in terms of our total investment, $60 billion is less than 10% if you take our gross fixed capital formation. And the unfortunate thing today at the moment, I mean, I'm not going to go into this whole debate going on in the yellow pages about whether the economy has slowed down, whether it will get out, how many green shoots there are, how many red flags there are. I'm not going to get into it. But the fact of the matter is that today, despite a fair amount of foreign direct investment, our total fixed capital formation in the economy stands at around 26%. It used to be in about 2008, 2009, even 2004, 11. It was 34% in 2011, it was over 36% in 2009. Now there's a simple back of the envelope calculation you can make. I guess all of you have done some economics, and you probably know this idea about an incremental capital output ratio. Assume that to be 4, and accept my word for it. It is roughly that. When the investment rate is about 36, you get 9% growth. And that's roughly what you did get for the best 4 or 5 years of the UPA. When you have 27% capital formation rate, you have about 6.5%. At 28, it will be 7. That's what you are aspiring to today. And there is something which has really gone wrong with the economy in terms of that simple one basic indicator, which is how much is being saved and invested in a country like ours. And that, leaving aside the fact that the priorities on the other stuff, they remain, but they are second rate in something. We talk less about health, we talk less about education, than we talk about growth and infrastructure in terms of ranking priorities. So, look at the landscape and make up your mind. The landscape remains more or less the same. Wherever we are better off than we were yesterday. We've erred some places, succeeded in others. We agree on many things of where we want to go, but there too we disagree on some. And for each of us, we've got to actually make up our mind where do we want to be. And having made up our mind, we must do another thing. Do we want it to go together, or do we want us to fragment and go different places in the same stream? Thank you.